Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome.
So as you all know, the election is right around the corner, and we are talking today about where we should go and how we grow and build audience and build coalition around shoring up the Native Land Pod and welcoming more people home. So today we're going to dive right into it. Welcome home, y'all. I am Angela Rye with Tiffany Cross and Andrew Gillum. Y'all, we got a lot to talk about around this, and probably it may end up in a fierce debate. Sometimes we end up in debate. You know what I want to go to first, Andrew? This is a great question for you. You are one of the greatest campaigners I've ever seen. And so as we build a ground game for our podcast, where we are hoping to engage people beyond just listeners, but really being a part of our home, being a part of Native Land, being a part of this safe space, and engaging politically. I think overall we really would desire to see people shore up participation overall in the political process. What is the best way to shore up not just support for the podcast and grow the audience, but to grow that base of concerned citizens that are engaged, that participate on the show, send in their questions, et cetera, et cetera? What do you think is the best way for us to do that?
Well, thank you for the question, Executive Producer Rye. And in seriousness, I would just say I don't assume that they are not already extremely engaged, responsive, and involved in the show, because I can't tell you how many folks that, I mean, you know it, you see it too when we're out and we're moving. And then when I think about what these individuals do in their real lives, they're like carrying they're carrying the globe. So I think I don't know how we rate this or how we rank it or get a determination of it. I would be willing to bet we probably have amongst our listeners some of the most responsive, active, engaged, and owning, like ownership sort of feeling. So I think that's probably one of our assets. When I think about growth for us, I think white liberals want to find and probably would find home in this show, if for no other reason, to be the fly on the wall who then gets to go back in their circles of diversity where that exists, or in their very non-diverse circles, and talk with some believed authority or perceived or heard or listened to perspective Black folks who are interested in culture and politics are thinking, doing, and by way of sort of keeping a pulse on the community. And I'm not offended by that. I actually I like that happens. In fact, I would say since we aired the first question we got from a white viewer, young man from Atlanta, we've now seen more white viewers submit questions because maybe they made the assumption that this couldn't be a home for them and that they were to, just eavesdrop. But I think by doing that and inviting them in, and I just think there's a huge growth opportunity amongst white liberals who want to follow the right instruction, which is don't assume what I think. Don't assume we see this thing the same way. Come have a seat, take a listen. And if there's something growth or gain you get from that, cool.
Well, I think Angela is asking the question because a part of it is, growing our audience. So I hear you, Andrew. I'm definitely a fan. I think, we all probably on some level take the Fred Hampton approach to coalition building. I think, though, is a difference between campaigning and growing an audience. And they're cousins, not sisters, right? There is definitely a Venn diagram where these things overlap. Like I think with a campaign, there's a call to action. We want you to vote on this day for this issue. I think when it comes to growing an audience, we're saying we want you to come back every week with all the things that are pulling at your attention. We are offering you something so valuable. We're asking for your time to come back every week after week after week. And not only do that, but tell other people to come back week after week and like and review and share our content and all that. So I think when it comes to that brand of things, we'd be interested in hearing from you guys at home where you'd like to see us. Because the thing is, we may pop up in places that you don't always like and that you don't always agree with. And I think this is where there are points of disagreement among the three of us. And I do want to point out, we read y'all's comments. We, see all the things y'all are saying. And I appreciate that the audience, Angela and Andrew, I'll share with you guys, that they really love the disagreement among the three of us, because we never get to have nuance anywhere else. If we were all on a cable news panel, all three of us would mostly agree, and that would be that. But we are so much more complicated than that. We have so many more like diversity of opinion among of us, and different life experience and different professional experience. So I really appreciate that we offer that space for you all at home, the same way that we allow for each other. So I think maybe our points of disagreement are here when we talked about convincing last week, and I'm saying I'm not a convincer. I don't necessarily, Angela, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I know I don't want to go on Fox News. I don't find that to be a good use of my time. I think what's valuable to me is telling people who are receptive and aligned, like, let's build that audience first. I'm not going to the dissenters first. I'm going to the people who agree first, and let's have a groundswelling there. I don't know that I necessarily want to sit with people routinely who I have an ideological difference with. But you operate in a lot of spaces. So what are your thoughts about where we should go, what we should do?
What I like about this mini pod for us is it's actually very instructive to other podcasts who may be trying to wrestle with the same thing. Like, it feels like you kind of hit a plateau with your audience. It's the same people are coming back every week. We're not talking about those folks who are already in the know. They may be what they call political junkies or politicos. They're already into this type of content. And so how do you reach people who maybe, to your last point, Tiff, the 2 points you raised were receptive and aligned. There are folks who, in order to be receptive and aligned, they first have to know about it. And I think there's still a really large gulf of folks who don't know about it. Even in my professional development program, when some of the young people come in, they don't know about the podcast yet. We owe ourselves a tour, especially right now. We are saying how much democracy is on the line and all that's at stake. Well, how are we demonstrating all that's at stake if we're just in the studio every week? So what happens if we, hit the pavement? We're at FAMU and we're at Spellhouse Homecoming and we're in Detroit and we're in Philly and, all of these places that we're currently finalizing the dates for. And then who do we show up with as a collaboration? Because they are the folks that you already listen to, whether they're business leaders or other podcasts or elected officials that you really respect. What should we do in that respect? And I think the world, to me, is really open, because I don't know how we grow by talking in an echo chamber. I've never been interested in that. It's more exciting to me to hear, like, that's what I actually love about our disagreements too. I get mad that we don't all agree, but also I appreciate that we don't all agree. Yeah. Because there are perspectives and lived experiences that y'all have that I don't. I think, to me, what makes the idea of getting out of the studio dynamic, to me, is the opportunity to hear from perspectives we would never hear if we don't, and it's beyond your Thanksgiving dinner table or your Christmas, dinner table. You're talking to people who you may not hear from. They would never even have the opportunity to share space with you. That, to me, is exciting. Can I ask you,
what if Sean Hannity invites us to co-host a podcast with him? Just one day. Just not like ongoing, but like, let's do this one time.
I'm open to that. And the reason I'm open to that is because I think that I believe people can be convinced. as dumb as that may be, as altruistic.
I think people can be convinced. Do you think Sean Hannity viewers can be convinced?
I'm not sure, because I don't know who his viewers are. I think that his viewership may be large and diverse. I think there are some people that watch the show to see what he's spewing, just so they can go back. The people that I know that watch Fox, because I don't talk to a lot of MAGA voters. Can you imagine why not? I don't really talk to them, but the folks who I know who watch Fox are like, I just want to hear what the right is saying today. So I think there are some of those folks that could be convinced to be like, oh, I didn't know that Tiffany, Andrew, and Angela had a podcast. Let me check it out at least once. I think that's a possibility. And I also think that it would make for interesting content. Our viewers are used to us dissenting, but not dissenting on things that move Black people forward. Like they're not used to us debating the end goal of moving us forward. They're used to us debating how we move forward.
Right.
And I think having a conversation with someone who's just like, forget y'all, I don't care if you move forward or not, drown, bitch, is something completely different.
Well, I want to tell you, I do know the Sean Hannity viewers because I think any of us who've ever worked in television, you look at the ratings, you look at, Nielsen and look at the breakdown of the demographics, and their viewers are not actually very diverse. And the people who are watching just out of curiosity do not comprise, I don't know it off the top of my head, so I'd hate to give it, but I think it's something like 93% white and conservative, but I don't, you guys can fact check me on that. But when you look at the numbers of who is actually watching, it is not a very diverse coalition. So honestly, my perspective is I don't want to spend my time talking to those people. I would rather talk to people who feel a bit lost in politics, like maybe they're not political junkies, but they have curiosity about it. And maybe they feel like everyone kind of talks over their head.
Yes.
Maybe people are just talking at them. They don't feel included in the conversation. Like those are the people I'd rather talk to. I like that intersection of people who can have a passionate debate about Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole and Drake, and also have a passionate debate about our foreign policy, and also have a passionate debate about political and economic systems, and also have a passionate debate about Brown v. Board and did it serve us, And I think there are enough people out there. I know when I get in a cab, taxi drivers have opinions. At the barbershop, folks have opinions. In the group chats, folks have opinions. People watching a basketball game have opinions. I want those people to start tuning in. I don't necessarily want to go after Sean Hannity viewers or dissenters first. If we grow a coalition of people who are, somewhat receptive to our message, then I would look at outsiders. But right now, I'd rather go after people who are receptive to us. That would be my thought. Andrew, are you frozen or what is going on over there?
No, I'm listening. I'm genuinely listening to you all and trying to. I was your first set of comments after I mentioned sort of liberal whites. I thought I may have misunderstood the question. So I'll say again, and maybe a little hopefully clearer, that I don't think we ought to do anything stylistically different. Show up as individuals who we are not, repping perspectives that are not ours. I think
of course not.
The sauce is right. I think, however, that there are communities who ideologically agree with us but may not share our skin color or lived experience, who are authentically and genuinely curious about and want to do the right things about learning more. In the wake of sort of the summer of the awakening, during COVID, after obviously the murder of George Floyd, you had a lot of Black thought leaders saying, I'm not here to teach you. It's not my job to, I don't take responsibility for your education on this. You do the work. And my problem with that line of thinking was I was thinking, golly, well, where does that begin? Well, then they start reading our books and start showing a bit more of our lectures and so on and so forth. But if you genuinely just want to know folks better, and maybe you're in a place where you don't get to interact with a lot of us, there are not a lot of us there. Maybe not a lot of us at your job or where you worship. Where would folks be able to tune in? And I just, my thoughts around an area of growth is in a white liberal space, not for politics, not because I'm running for office, but because I think that there is a sincere, genuine interest and allyship potential. And I think our issue is just them getting to know it, getting to hear it. I don't think we have to convince anybody. I think we show up as who we are, bring who we are, and knowing that we're out here, and I think that's supposed to take care of itself. But it's not for politics. It's not for any other reason than I think it's a growth opportunity.
I don't know what Andrew is over there doing.
I'm sorry, y'all. My computer is slow, so you're showing
blurry.
up like
there
different. I can hear like it's like your voice.
Oh, he is delayed, child.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's probably the storm.
Dang, even in Tally. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's frustrating for y'all, and it's doubly frustrating for me. The problem, and I think you're probably right. It is. It's ominous looking outside.
Wow.
So it could be the weather that's changing on my side, but I will say there are in San Francisco, in Orange County, in everywhere America, these clubs and organizations that meet week to week, hundreds of folks who are interested in politics, culture, mostly all white audiences who we wouldn't be in necessarily a fight with over what their positions may be on this, is that, and the third. But I guarantee you they would be learning immensely from the way where we stand and where each of us individually view things. And I would submit we would be in for a learning on how it is they see the world. I talked about the White Lotus incident where I listened to this white lady say, "Oh, you got to be careful." And even if we don't have sympathy for that, it doesn't hurt to hear it. So you at least have some sense of where some other people may be coming from in that way. And responding, we might respond with the right kind of tactics and words and tools that they can then hear us.
Yeah.
So a homecoming is going to be great. I love a HBCU homecoming. And in addition to that, a 92nd and Y, a North Palm Beach club, that's what it's called, that meets every other week or once a month. Those are also very, very rich, well, literally rich, but also rich environments where I think we would go, and it wouldn't necessarily be hostile, but it certainly would be a learning. Because as you said, we don't want to speak to it shouldn't be about necessarily talking to the choir every week, although, yeah, the choir needs a lift every week too, probably. But we also have a choir that's a lot larger than I think we've conceived of. And there are a lot of ways to get to them so that they know we exist.
I mean, I think that's kind of my point, because I got to be honest, I'm not necessarily like, please, white liberals, come listen to us. You know, it's like, yeah, everybody's welcome. But I would think, you know, by 2044, there will be no racial majority. I think, you know, the AAPI community, fastest growing demographic out there. Welcome home, y'all. The Latino community, for the first time, ellipsed Black folks in terms of eligible voters, not registered voters. Welcome home, y'all. The indigenous community, who rarely has a platform or a voice. Welcome home, y'all. You know, Arab voices, Muslim voices, you know, who don't get a lot of reception or attention. Welcome home, y'all. So I would welcome coalitions of people to this platform. I mean, that's definitely a way to grow audiences, but also my people. You know, there are so many types of Black folks across this country who feel ignored, unheard, discarded, and disregarded. I want those folks to be aware. I don't think our numbers are large enough yet that we have to be so eager to go outside the community and beg for listeners, although we welcome everybody. But I would love for us to tap in to young folks, you know, who are developing their worldview, our peers who don't have a place to go. You know, people who find legacy media tired and boring and not reflecting their voices. So, look, I think we might land in some spaces that some of y'all don't agree with, and there are platforms that some of y'all, you know, might find that y'all might disagree with, and y'all don't like the things that are said on some of these platforms. But you might see us on some of these platforms, and I just don't want us in gaining new followers. I don't want our existing audience to think that we are taking a different direction or abandoning them. We're going to stay consistent, but we might pop up some places to welcome home new folks, if that makes sense.
Part of the way we welcome home new folks is to ensure that they even know that we exist. And that means, you know, making democracy and politics, democratizing access to processes and making sure that folks feel comfortable engaging. So that may mean, you know, we become a little more pedestrian and we collab with some folks that have an affinity towards making their material, their podcast, very accessible to their listenership, the folks who view them, et cetera. Andrew, I know you were about to say something.
I just wanted to quickly say what powers my thinking around building audience is also that we have to get laws, systems, structures changed. Mm-hmm. And how do we educate and equip people with what it is that they need. And by the way, the lessons on how we do that don't need to necessarily change because of the complexion of the person who's on the listening side. They just need to know and also need to hear the best ways in which we can go about getting the change that we want. Nobody wants to talk into the ether. I want to see systems leveled in some cases, and in other cases, reimagined, and in other cases, built because nobody ever considered that before. And unfortunately, at least where I live in Florida, where Black folks are 11% of the population, we can't do that by ourselves.
Exactly. And that's the point, right? Like we're what we're talking about is not abandoning our base. It's talking about growing our base, constituency building, coalition building, and growing audience. So this has been great. Hopefully we can offer some more tactics. Tiff, if you have a tactic to leave folks with who are growing their own podcast listenerships or campaigning or, whatever else they're doing out there to grow, what would you offer? One tactic?
I always offer that Fred Hampton approach. I think, coalition building, a lot of people, when my show on, when I had the show on MSNBC, people say, why are you including them? They're white adjacent, or why are you including them and focus on us? And I just disagree with that. I love Black folks. No, I get so tired of people trying to, who suggest that about any of us. You are listening to 3 people every week who passionately love Black folks, and we all live in service to equality and liberation of Black people, because when that happens, everybody wins. But we've always had allies in this fight in America, and those allies look like Latino people, look like members from the API community, look like members from the indigenous community, look like members from the white folks, from white communities, look like poor white populations, look like Arab voices and Muslim voices, and all the things that I referenced earlier. So my tactic is that sometimes our values align where our skin color does not. And, I just don't want to take the oppressor's tools and start hating each other. And looking, if you got this, then that means my community isn't getting that. And we fighting over breadcrumbs while the wealthy white men are looking at us laughing and dabbing the corners of their mouth. So my tactic is, let's not let them weaponize our communities against each other.
And then, Andrew, when you think about a single tactic that folks who are growing an audience or growing a base, struggling with coalition building, what's the tactic you would offer them?
One, I'd just say define yourself first so that you don't get out there not knowing who you are, and then you're building an audience and recontorting yourself to then contain that audience based off of what you say. Say what you want to say. Do what you want to do, move the way you want to move, and I promise you there's an audience out there who will find you. If I were talking about trying to find common cause, I would team up with folks who have the kind of audience and the following with whom you would like to then grow as a part of your constituency. And even if y'all aren't philosophically exact, that maybe have a rich enough conversation that folks are like, man, I'd actually like to come back and hear a little bit more than that. And I'm going to say this selfishly, in Florida, where, I take exception with the issue that Black folks and brown folks have found largely common cause, because that hasn't been, as a local or a person who's going to say, right, my own experience. So I'd love to see us do, a real conversation across the table with with the Latino community, as ranging as it is, to talk about where exactly are we finding common cause, because the trends aren't looking good here.
Yeah, So to restate, Andrew's suggestions were define yourself first, and then to find common cause. Tiff said coalition build in so many words. And just so y'all are clear, if y'all have not read her book, you need to. She's consistent. And if you didn't know about The Beat, which is an amazing publication that she put out online out of her own money when she needed to as well. She was very consistent about us becoming the rising majority that we know we can be, one that is helpful in lifting communities of color writ large. My suggestion would be to be unafraid to think outside of the box. Sometimes what happens when things get stagnant, whether we're talking about relationships or we're talking about schools or we're talking about campaigns or what have you, people get very comfortable and safe with their approaches. This thing has always worked, so why do we change it? Well, we change it because we need to grow. And sometimes whatever you change, it may not result in a change that you like immediately, but it will eventually. And so don't be afraid to grow. Don't be afraid to try something new. And don't shut people down automatically. Hear their whole idea before you get to know. Sometimes there's a yes on the other side of that no. So that is our show for today. This is Native Land Pod. It's a mini pod. We hope you tune into all of our mini pods. And we'd love to hear from you, our listeners, our NLP fam, on what you think we need to do to continue not only to grow audience, but to grow folks who are civically engaged in their communities and overall. Thanks so much. Welcome home, y'all. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.